Anselm really doesn't need any introduction. He has made 7 shows in the last 12 years with White Cube. In the 1990s, he did a string of exhibitions, of wonderful exhibitions with Anthony Doffey. His work is well known in London, and he's an artist whose work attracts a lot of people to his exhibitions in London. Witness the triumph, I think I can say, at the Royal Academy in 2014, following on from an extraordinary installation in the Courtyard in 2007. The current exhibition, which opens tomorrow night at White Cube in Bermondsey, centres around the theme of Walhalla. And Anselm, I know that this is a question that British journalists are already focusing in on, and I think it's a good subject to begin with, which is, although you work around a lot of themes, mythical themes, Germanic themes, people are seeing this exhibition in a specifically political context. How do you respond to that? How much is this about what is happening in the Middle East or happening in different parts of the world at the moment, and how much is it part of your broader exploration?
I always allow people to see what they want to see, because the people who look at the paintings, they do her part to create the painting. The artist does his part, and everyone who looks at the painting has another painting in his head then. So they are a creator too. So if someone wants to take me for a political artist, why not? I'm not, but you can take me for that.
You were very much a political artist when you began, so I don't think we can let you off the hook so easily with that. When you were a student, and we've seen examples of it on the rotating series of images, in 1969, for your diploma work, you made a series of photographs called Heroic Symbols. You'd also made a series of photographs, which you're still using, involving the then banned Salute. That was political.
No, it was not at all. No, it was to find out myself what I would have done in those times, and what I think about that. And so it was something to do with me. And certainly all what I do is directed also by the politics. So I read 3 newspapers every day. I look sometimes TV. So I'm well informed, but I don't think that I can direct politicians.
It was quite clear that your generation, and I think you and perhaps Georg Baselitz above all, but you above even he, were seen as trying to remind Germany that a kind of collective amnesia was not acceptable in the late 60s, and that the country had to face up to its past rather than bury it. You may plead not guilty to that, but moving on, the point I want to ask you is, how much do you think that idea is still necessary? How much has Germany dealt with or exercised or worked through its collective past?
No, I must say that Germany is now a good example, because from 75 on, there was a lot in the medias. You could read everywhere about this time, and in the TV, in the radio, in books. So I think they did a lot to know about this time. But when I was studying in the 60s, nobody knows anything about that. And I studied first law in Freiburg, and my teachers, some of my teachers was Nazi, and they was not removed from the university. And the best conseiller, the advisor of Adenauer, was a man who wrote the laws against the Jews, and so Germany would never come so quick up if they would have put all the Nazis in a jail. That is one of the things that they let them there. So no one judge was condemned after the war. Not one. It's completely crazy, no?
Were you angry about that? Angry as a young man that no one was held to account?
I was wondering. I thought, how is this possible? Angry, I don't know, but I thought it's not possible.
And how was Wagner generally, and the myth around the Valkyrie, how was that when you were a young man? How was that perceived?
I remember when I was a young boy, um, let's say perhaps 14 years old or so, and then my mother put on the radio, and it was the Lohengrin from Bayreuth. And this, I think, defined me for the rest of my life, you know? This far Gebiet, this far region, you can never go there, but you are dying to see this region. It's a simple, this Lohengrin, this Mont Salvat, this region is a symbol for wishes. They cannot be completed. You can say complete, but you know, if your wish completes, you're disappointed. So I was very impregnated by this opera for the rest of my life.
So, was there any sense of wanting to decontaminate Wagner? It's a very complex thing, Wagner's relationship to Nazis, and often unjustly accused of holding all sorts of different views, sometimes justly. But did you feel, having fallen under the spell of Wagner's music, that there was an element of wanting to reclaim his reputation in the way that you wanted to reclaim other traditions?
You know, there is always a big difference between the man as a person and what he does. So we have this with a lot of people, this problem. Then we have with Céline, Voyage au bout de la nuit. We have it with Martin Heidegger, and we have it with Wagner. Wagner was a real anti-Semite, a real one. So, but this is not influencing his music. Not at all, I think.
I am interested as to how the subject of specifically Valhalla has found its way into your art now. You know, you work in ongoing series. Your work, and the series in some ways never end. I want to talk to you about that later. But do you have a sense of why Valhalla has suddenly become a subject? When I went to your studio,
it was not suddenly. Walhalla was in my mind since, let's say, since I started to be an artist since '68.
Why? But why? When I visited your studio last 6 months ago, there was no, unless you were hiding it, and it's possible in the vast studio you have in Kwasi, but I saw no trace of the current exhibition. I saw many of of fragments of the work, and I saw the basis of some of the work, but the notion that you would move towards the subject of Valhalla wasn't there. Why has that emerged in the last 6 months?
You know, we have Walhalla in Bergerac, in the south of France. There are these towers, what I painted now. Sometimes I do an action, I do an installation, like I did it in the south of France. And then I paint over this. I paint this installation, and this I did, but I didn't know that it will be Walhalla. I thought I have to paint these towers once, and then I thought it could be Walhalla. The painting told me what it wanted to be.
I think people are fascinated by that, how subject matter and content materialize themselves in your work. How does a work then, broadly speaking, begin, if it's possible to talk about this? What is the beginning of the process?
Oh, when I begin a paint, you mean a painting, for example? So a painting I'm in the color, I'm in the material, I just start, and I do something. I don't know what I do, I just do something, because I'm very physics, so I dance around and I do something. And then, after a while, I put it up on the wall, and I look at it, and then there is a discussion between the painting and me, and I'm reflecting what I thought, what this painting wanted to say to me, and then I change it. If I make a decision, I change it, and then it's another, and then a few days later, a few weeks later, I put it again on the wall, and so it goes on and on until I think it could be finished, until the gallerist comes and says we need now some painting. So then they have to be finished.
In one of the rooms at White Cube in the current exhibition, it's the second room on the right as you go down the lead corridor. There is what I think you're describing either as an arsenal or an archive room where there is all sorts of different materials and ancient machinery and so on, which is both ordered, it's sort of boxed and classified, but then things seep out. I'm curious as to how you use material and how that reflects your use of material. It's like a kind of giant palette as much as it is your mind.
Yeah, what you see in the gallery is a small part of my arsenal. Arsenal is what I collect, all things, unfinished book, photos, writings, things what I find in the world, like mushrooms, mussels, all kind of things. This is all collected there. And what was your question?
Well, you're kind of answering it really, which is it's a kind of palette. It's a room. Your archive or arsenale is your armory. This is the material that you will use as well as it. But you talked about your studio being a reflection of your mind, your brain.
It's not a palette. It's more it's the same thing what I describe as a synapses. There are a lot of things, you know, and they are inscribed in my memory. And I can see, up there I have some teeth from some patient. You know, I collected one's teeth. I have friends, dentist friends, who collected all the teeth of what they took out. No, it's not a joke. Huh? It's because when you see these teeth, they take out the bad teeth, you know, and you see all the misery of the world in that. You know, you see the holes and when you collect this. So this is one of my collection. I have other things, you know, and I've collected my nails all the time, you know.
Your nails.
My nails, yes. It's you shouldn't give away nothing, you know. And then I found out that because there's a ship in the northern mythology, there's a ship. It's called the Argonauten ship, and that's made of the nails of dead warriors. Can you imagine this? It's completely crazy. But I found this, and so my nails was used for that.
I think
you can give me yours too.
I'd be honoured. I think this idea of obsessive collecting is fascinating, and it's only recently I've heard you say, "I never throw anything away." And it was clear when you moved a lot of your archive or arsenal from Barjac to Kwasi. It's there. It's in containers. Some of it's been unpacked. And every time one goes to the studio, there's dentist chairs, printing machines. There's different things you're collecting. Were you an obsessive collector as a child? Did you hoard things or have collections?
Yes, I liked it, but my mother was so German precise that they always threw all away. You know, she didn't like dust. She didn't like these things. So she always cleaned it up, and it was a real problem for me.
You talked about your childhood in many ways, but you said about the idea of emptiness, that it was a childhood where, in the aftermath of the war, you were born in 1945, that there wasn't much, if anything, and so one of your impulses was to fill things up.
Yes, a child has no moral prescriptions. A child take what it sees as it is, without any connotation, you know. And for this reason, you keep well all what you see in your childhood, you know, and you can work with this. But that was not the question, no?
But you talked about emptiness and filling things up.
So I grew up in a village, and there was nothing. No television, we had no radio. No, radio had a little one, and there was no entertainment. There was nothing, and I was bored all the time. But bored in a good sense, you know. You know, Martin Heidegger. He made one. Was heißt eine Vorlesungsreihe? He made one semester lecture about boredom.
Ennui, yeah.
Because when you are bored, you get philosopher, because then you reflect about what you feel, and so if you're always in action, you don't get philosopher. So this boredom, this emptiness, is very helpful. And today I see with my children that's difficult to recreate a place where it can be boredom.
I suppose the notion of monument and memorial and memory is something that people have seen in a lot of your art. Is that an idea, or are those ideas that you explore consciously, or is it just the result of what it is that you produce?
I think the monuments, when I paint a monument in my painting, it's always very ironic. You know, it's I did a monument for the unknown painter, for example, or or things like that.
Or monuments of Mao that have now been disbanded, or the Walhalla monument.
Yeah, that's all. I'm amusing myself with these monuments.
But are you consciously trying to forge an appropriate language for the monumental or the monument today? I mean, the towers in the Royal Academy courtyard, Jericho, were they monuments or anti-monuments, or neither?
Or it was not a monument because it was supposed to be there for, I don't know, 4 weeks or so, no?
I think 3 months, but yeah.
And then we put it away. No, it's not a monument, you know, because it had no sense. A monument has a sense. You do it for Beethoven or for Goethe, you do a monument. But this was not for someone. So it was just, no, I wouldn't say it was a monument. It was a playground for me.
Which brings us back to the studio, I suppose, and to Barjac. And you talked about your childhood amongst the ruins. And the ruin is about, or the fragment is something very strong, I think, in your work, and there's historical resonances. Do you have to resist the temptation to make things whole, to heal things, or to fix things? Or is that part of the impulse that is never quite realized?
Oh, when you say fix, this word I don't understand. But when I have a ruin in front of me, then it's for me a beginning. Because you have the elements, you have the material to do something new. And for this reason, a ruin is for me much more complete than a finished building. And I was, as a child, I had no gadgets,
technology.
I had nothing. So I had just the bricks. That was all what I had. So I built houses, and since I cannot stop.
You said the ruin is for you a beginning. You were involved in, you directed and created an opera called, in the beginning, Am Anfang, in Paris. And the towers, which we can see now, and which are also in the Walhalla paintings and are a reoccurring motif, were central to that staged production, installation, as I saw it at the time. Now you're using them again in Walhalla, as I've said. The Wagnerian connotations are there. Could we ever see Kiefer producing a full ring cycle? Are you still wrestling with the idea of operatic productions? Because I know you didn't think Am Anfang succeeded.
No, we had a project with Klaus Michael Gröber, who is a German director who died. And I worked so well with him. I had 2 projects with him, and we was proposed to do the ring in Milano in the
Scala.
In the Scala, and then he died, unfortunately. And then I didn't want to do it anymore because this was the best director I could find, and he died, unfortunately. So once I will do this again, something, but for the moment I'm a painter.
If people say your paintings and sculptures and installations are theatrical, is that an insult to you? If people find your work theatrical?
They want to be insulting when they say this, but it doesn't insult me.
Because?
Because you know, what is a theater? A theater. I do theater. For example, I don't want put paintings in any circumstances. I have in the south of France, I built for each painting of each group of painting a building, because paintings need protection. Then they can strahlen. Then they can radiate from a secure point out. And this is theater, if you want. And so it's just a definition of what is theatrical. I have my definition.
Yeah, you're right. It can be. It is used as an insult for some. Dramatic is also a term that's not used so insultingly. But I'm also interested in that idea of, installation immersion, the architectural motif, the physical architecture of these towers, the architectural nature as well as the architectonic nature of Barjac. How are you working with architects as we're in the Royal Institute of British Architects?
I never, in my place in south of France, it's a big place, and I did a lot of things there, but I never consulted an architect, nor even not an engineer. I built it myself with my assistant, one over the other, and I had the wish that it gets a little bit, what is this?
Well, waves, it rocks, yeah.
That goes a little bit down, a little this. It doesn't. It stays.
So there's the one arena, I suppose, that you haven't dabbled with, dabbled, actually that is an insulting word and not meant, but the one arena you haven't moved into fully is the design of functional buildings. Were you ever tempted, or are you ever tempted, to move into the realms of architecture? Actually, maybe to move more into the realms of architecture. I mean, maybe your studio is.
No, you know, I did in the place in Croissy-Beaubourg near Paris. I did one building for galleries. You know, the prototype building of a good gallery, and I wait still if one gallerist do it like this somewhere.
You call this, you've just reminded, of course you did, yeah, I thought Bill Katz had helped you, but you did this. You might describe to people what the proportions of the perfect gallery are then, roughly, what are the proportions?
So they should be a little bit higher than wide, because this I have from the Renaissance, from the churches. It's wonderful, you know, if you have a little bit higher than the width, then you feel well.
Yeah, but how big is your created gallery?
It's not so big, it's
20 meters tall?
It's 20 meters tall, yes.
And how wide?
It's perhaps 28, and long it's, I think, 50. 60? 60, okay.
Yeah. So, large?
It depends. Compared to my studio, it's small. I call it tea house.
Yeah. You're now 71. You could say you're approaching your artistic maturity. Yeah. Do you have a sense of where maturity? Do you have a sense of where you're going in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Do you have a sense of what it is you want to realize or achieve, or are you still so immersed in the process of making art that you don't think in those ways?
You mean if I have a concept?
Yes, and I suppose a broader plan as to what the next 20 years are.
I have always concepts, and then I change them immediately. You know, I never execute, it's very rare that I execute my concept, because then it comes something against, and then I change the concept. But I go forward.
You made a show at the Royal Academy in 2014, which had a retrospective beginning and then a series of themed rooms that you were very involved in installing, making, selecting. The Pompidou show was perhaps more of a retrospective and even larger. I just wonder whether making those kind of exhibitions now, which means looking back as well as looking forward, I wonder whether it has any impact on the way that you approach your practice or the way you see the possibilities of going forward.
Not so much. I think retrospectives are extremely boring for an artist, because to see all your old paintings and all the stuff, you have to do it because you want to be famous, you know. But nevertheless, but it's boring. It's not what I want. I prefer to do something new, a new experience, and so. And also, they don't let me touch my painting, so that's always.
Yeah, and so we come full circle, as is so often the case in your work.